Let's talk some Oregon recruiting. This weekend, Minnesota comes to town. Now, that should be a cakewalk, hopefully not a trap game for the Ducks, but we're talking recruiting because signing day is just 3 weeks away, and we're going to talk some flip targets down the stretch with national analyst Adam Gorney. But before we do that, Duck fans, do me a favor. These are exciting times. Hit subscribe to the Rivals Recruits channel. All right, let's bring in national analyst Adam Gorney, and I want to talk about two LSU flip targets first. DB Havon Finney, we know Oregon wants to add a defensive back in this class, and Finney, one of the best available, but also defensive lineman Deuce Gerald's down in the South. Oregon would also like to add a defensive lineman. What do you think here with LSU without a coach?
Yeah, let's start with Finney. I've been told that if Corey Raymond stays on staff, on the new staff, that Finney will stick. Raymond is almost like a family friend to those guys. They're very close. And so I think that's going to be important, but not having a coach, and it seems like the coaching search is dragging on a little bit and there aren't a clear names, and the Brian Kelly situation is difficult. I think Michigan would be the biggest target for Finney if he were to flip, but no visits are set. Nothing is happening yet. So I think Oregon probably is on the outside looking in there.
Right. And then you got Deuce Gerald, who is kind of lumped into this group. He's one of the defensive linemen that remains committed, but is there a chance Oregon could flip him?
Yeah, definitely a chance, and I think that they're going after him. They're going to make a run at him. He's very, very talented, kind of fits their scheme really well inside and is super versatile. But there are definitely family connections to LSU. There are family connections to Ole Miss. He basically grew up in Baton Rouge, so there's comfort there, and I think that's going to be important. So again, I think the coaching staff is going to play a big factor here. Oregon is going to take a shot. Others are going to definitely take a shot at him. My perception right now is that he stays somewhere in the Southeast.
Yeah, I know Ole Miss. I think his father played at Ole Miss, something like that. There are deep ties down there. All right. Now, we're going to talk about another flip target that it looks like Dan Lanning is now making a priority. He has one running back committed, but now he's turning his attention to LaMarcus Bell, who's committed to Utah. He was a one-time Oregon State commitment, already flipped that commitment to Utah. But now how much of a priority is Oregon making Bell?
Yeah, this is interesting because they offered him and then they're sort of slow playing the visit. So I'm wondering if they're going to get him on campus for the USC game and then really, put the pedal to the metal to work on the flip. I just want to have Oregon have Ball and Bell as their running backs in future years. I think that'll be great. That's the important thing here. But yes, he was committed to Oregon State. He's now committed to Utah. And when he went to Utah, they really rolled out the red carpet for him. They brought in former running backs to talk up, how they get the ball there, running behind it, obviously a huge offensive line, and how they're going to focus on that. But he's from there. He's from Oregon. He grew up an Oregon fan. It was his dream school. They come in with a late offer. So I think Oregon's sort of just biding their time to that final home game where they can get him in for USC and then really work on the flip. So I think down the stretch, more than likely that one happens.
All right, yeah, you got LaMarcus Bam Bell. Don't forget his nickname is Bam, so there's a lot of alliteration there with Ball and Bam Bell, and it'd be a great running back room. All right, let's talk about a flip target that just won't go away. Caden Dixon-Wyatt, Mater Dei High School out there in California, committed to Ohio State early. There's always been rumors of Oregon. We've never completely put it away, and now here we are 3 weeks from signing day. Are the rumors legit? Should Oregon fans be watching Caden Dixon-Wyatt?
Yeah, the names I'm being called on the Ohio State board when I continue to report this, that Oregon is still very much in the picture, are pretty brutal. But yeah, I think this is totally about Brian Hartline. If he stays, Dixon-Wyatt and Chris Henry stay. If he goes, then it gets very, very interesting. I was told that Chris Henry was so connected to Brian Hartline that he was even flirting with the idea of visiting West Virginia last year if Brian Hartline got that job and following him there. So that relationship is super close. But I think Dixon-Wyatt is the bigger threat to flip down the stretch. Oregon was always the school that was sort of mentioned first with him. Even like leading into his commitment, a lot of people thought Oregon was going to be the pick until like the final moments when he picked Ohio State. So Oregon has always been there. I think they love him in this class. And I think they're sort of playing this, don't be in Chris Henry's shadow at Ohio State. Be your own man. Come to Oregon and be the next big time receiver here. So I think that's going to be appealing. But I do definitely believe that if Brian Hartline stays at Ohio State, he sticks with the Buckeyes.
Right. Do you think, we talk a lot on this show about programs maybe keeping somebody warm, hey, we got a running back looking around. We got this FIU running back that we're keeping warm. We might flip him if we need to. Is Caden Dixon-Wyatt kind of keeping Oregon warm?
Yeah, that's what I think it is. And I think Oregon's perfectly happy being kept warm in this situation. They would take him at the final minute. I think that they're fine with that as long as they're still in the picture. And we all know Dan Lanning in those final weeks can be very, very compelling. Right. Obviously, there's going to be an NIL factor there, but it's also going to be just him, really showing the love in those final days, that final stretch. He's done this before where, he kind of cruises along in the final month and it looks like nothing's happening. And then, bam, he really hits it hard in those final days when it really counts. And gets in the head of these kids and gets a lot of them to flip.
All right. Now, let's talk about potential flips away from Oregon down the stretch. And they're shaping up to be two Miami-Oregon battles. There's always this underlying narrative anytime we do a Miami or Oregon video where the comment section, there's still some bad blood between Oregon and Mario Cristobal, or Miami fans and Oregon fans. So we got two big-time battles shaping up down the stretch. We got wide receiver Jalen Lott and edge Anthony Tank Jones. Miami's trying here. Do you think they have a shot at flipping either of them? Hey, football fans, whether you're cheering on South Carolina Gamecocks or the Texas A&M Aggies on Saturday, November 15th, make sure you drop by the Whataburger food truck during your tailgate. Get ready to bring home the W early with a hot, fresh Whataburger in hand. And no matter who comes out on top, when you take your team to Whataburger, you'll feel like a winner with food made fresh and hot every time, 24/7. We'll see you at the game. We'll see you at Whataburger.
Yeah, I think it's a long shot, but I think Miami, has the capability of doing this. Lott is interesting. His sister runs track at USC, so there's something there to watch. Miami continues to stay involved with him, so that's going to be interesting. And then, you have the Texas factor, but he never just really seemed to warm up to Texas. So, yes, I think this is an Oregon-Miami battle. I think Oregon is still in a decent spot. Tank Jones is a very interesting one because I was told by one SEC sort of GM that they were shocked that he was leaving the South, that their read on him was that he was going to stay close to home. His dad is a big Alabama fan. Auburn was super involved in this recruitment for a long time when Hugh Freeze was there. Now that's sort of slipped off since they're in a coaching search as well. But, is staying home at Miami a feel of being closer to Alabama than going all the way to Oregon? On the flip side of that, I'm sure Jones has heard all of that talk. And sometimes kids kind of want to show that they can be independent and do their own thing and go that far away from home. We're also talking about a Tosh Lupoy factor here because he's been mentioned for the UCLA job. I don't think he's, long as a defensive coordinator with head coaching jobs opening. So I think that's going to be played down the stretch as well. So I think that's definitely a much more interesting one because a lot of people that have been involved in his recruitment thought he was going to not leave the area. And now Miami is very involved in this and he's kind of reciprocated that interest. But then there's that pushback that, teenagers like to do and show that they can be their own person. And then Oregon stays a factor in that.
All right. Oregon fans, talk to Adam and I. Which side of the coin are you on when it comes to signing day? Will Oregon be the flipper or the flippy? Let us know. Comment section below.